Okay, so I've been getting a lot of reviews and comments, and most of them have been just fantastic. But it's the naysayers that really I wanna. They really, yeah, they make me want to respond the most. So let me start by reminding you. Thank you so much for watching my videos, and if you could like and share and subscribe, the more that happens, the more videos I can make, and the more people see them. So also wanted to say I talked earlier about a video that I'd really liked that was in the Mud Flood Mansions, and it was done by Mud Flood. This is my favorite Mud Flood presenter immediately is the Mud Flood channel. So succinct, just really the best, and just fantastic work looking at the mansions of the Gilded Age. However, I got this comment from this person, Suzanne, who asked about where I get off having the gall, more or less paraphrasing, to talk about these things that I clearly know so little about, and that I would talk about them without mentioning them or in detail, and how dangerous that might be. And at some point, she said that California's Hollywood was not big until the 20s or something. I think she was trying to say until the 1900s. She's trying to say, which to an extent is an interesting claim. She also says that it's not her interest to look into Californian film history, where I would say that California film history is probably the best kind of photographic evidence you would find, and not looking or being interested in it would be short-sighted. So I want to also really quickly say I found this out, which is something interesting about the history of Freemasonry in La France. It is. I was talking to a friend who's in Spain right now, who's a French friend of mine, and he was mentioning how Freemasonry is called France Mason, which is Frank Masonry, and he thought it may come from Francois. Of France. But I don't know if that's the case, or neither does he. So we'll look into that later. However, Francois's father, Charles, is this guy. So anyway, I wanted to talk about films in California. I don't care. They're important. So D.W. Griffith, who brought films from New York to California, born in 1875, lived to 1948. He made a bunch of movies that are rather famous, and one of the ones that are really it's the most expensive film besides Metropolis, also one of the best ones, Intolerance. And Intolerance was, granted, made in 1916 or completed, but it was this insane film that is color hand tinted, and it is about Babylon. There are four periods in this film, from the serfdom of Europe, but straight up to Babylon. And of course, afterwards, the sets were destroyed, and we don't know anything about what happened to this like $7 million film, or $10 million or $11 million film in 1916. But it's available online, and it's a very important film that everyone should see. I don't care. You need to see it. And it's also like, even if you don't care about what we're talking about, but if you do, then you really should see it, because it just explains a lot about um, about the history of the mud flood, and about the fall of this greater civilization and its correlation with just everything. Like it's literally, it's all here. I'm surprised that it hasn't been brought up yet. I mean, just look at some of this. This is supposed to be, they just built this in California and in Chicago, and they made this movie, right? Like this is a great story, that this is supposed to be built in California for a movie. I love it. Anyway, it's gone, except for what has become the Hollywood Mall. So he ran a company called the Biograph Company and the Mutoscope Company, the American Mutoscope Company, that made films. This is their building, um, you know, and look at that pine cone at the top of the tower. Also, they made a bunch of films, but they're supposed to be the creators of the first film shot in California, or I mean in Hollywood. And let me get into the St. Francis Dam as a response. But here's the first Hollywood movie produced in Hollywood, and it is about, of course, the daughter of the chief on her return from college, and she's taking the railroad. And like this is real. This is really the first California movie in Hollywood, supposedly. So, I mean, it tells this story, and it's kind of funny because my grandmother took the train from Oxnard to Stanford when she was a girl, and she was a little Indian girl, it's just too correlated. I'm sorry. Like I don't know. And I'm making this video pretty brashly, but this is like in response to the belief that Californian history is not about film. So I wanted to get into the Hollywood just more specifically. I was bringing up that this is like 1910 in Hollywood, but there's films that were made beforehand. Also, this is 1912 footage of downtown Los Angeles, and just to get a perspective of what Los Angeles looked like, it was just livid. There's so much happening here. The trains are electric. The cars are often electric. There are biodiesel vehicles, just amazing textiles, and I stand to be challenged on any of those facts. Also, this is before the beginning of the great Hollywood era, supposedly. Yet this is the time when California is at a height, when there is so many architects working on so many buildings for so many purposes, and it just makes sense that it would have to happen this way. I mean, the supposed story that they moved to California for the weather, everyone knows that California is not actually full of the best weather, especially in the summertime. Los Angeles has June gloom, and there's more actually in California about unions. That's the official, one of the unofficial, but a lot of unions will tell you that they moved to California to get away from unions, and so the unions came back. But California was not just Hollywood, and so that's an interesting thing about Northern California, because Northern California, before it was Hollywood, was the center of filmmaking in California, and so watch out for some of these buildings. Like this is the courthouse in Santa Cruz originally. Okay, and yeah, like straight up, just straight up. So here's Santa Cruz, California, which was devastated by earthquakes. The 1989 earthquake, the 1904 earthquake, the 1906. You name an earthquake that hit the San Andreas fault line, this is where it is. But the only place that lasted is that tower there, as far as I know. Most of these buildings have fallen down since then. But look at the rail system that was also electric trolleyed. So, just for some examples of the 1890s. Okay, and the Santa Cruz Boardwalk, which has the old electric and steam rail. I need to talk to my friend who actually is a mechanic for the boardwalk. He has to go to Germany usually about once a year to hand make parts for this, because it is a handmade roller coaster from the 1850s or 1890s or whenever our official story is. Doesn't really matter. Here's the concrete boat in Capitola, which is finally disintegrated. I should have gotten a picture of what it looks like now. It's really sad. But people used to hang out here and have all sorts of fraternal Shriner parties. And here's where the train came to the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk, where there was a lot of fun to be had. Also, Santa Cruz. So one of the things you'll see is that Santa Cruz and California was built up of a lot of fantastic and interesting buildings, and then there's these old Western like places in between them, and those are the places that are being built up. They're the new communities, and they end up being movie sets. So Santa Cruz, where the giant redwoods are, also El Dorado County, which was a book that I believe Suzanne had recommended. I've been checking out, and it is really interesting. So I'm going to say thank you, but it's going to take me a while to get through all of this. But I actually recommend anybody who's interested in history to check out this book. It's not a bad recommendation. So thank you very much. And the last thing I'll mention is the St. Francis Dam. So in response to the flooding caused by the St. Francis Dam of Mulholland, if you've spent much time around Mulholland, Mulholland was the name of the man, William Mulholland, who was the chief engineer, born in 1855 in Ireland. He came with the dream of building in Los Angeles this great waterworks system, and he supposedly piped all this water from one lake into another, and that's the story. I mean, I can get into why this story is kind of ridiculous, but I actually encourage anyone first to just watch the History Channel official story, because if you still believe that this happened this way afterwards, then okay, maybe we can talk about it. But if you really look into the Los Angeles aqueduct system and Los Angeles Lake outside of Los Angeles County, the Angels Lake, also Mono, you'll start to. I get that the questions are being asked specifically by someone who has not an interest in mudflood or Tunguska, but you'll find that there are a lot of similarities and that there was a correlation in